Hello guys, my name is Anna and I'm a Ukrainian, and I have decided I will vlog daily from my country Ukraine since the start of the so-called war with Russia. And in my daily vlogs I try to update you on the important real-life situations in my country Ukraine, and of course I'm always glad to answer your questions and to clarify some facts from our history, our culture, or whatever interests you. And today I want to speak a little bit about Russia as the state terrorist, as a country terrorist. And I know that at the beginning of this war, our President Zelensky has addressed different governments of the world asking to acknowledge Russia as the terrorist state. And I think this is a very correct definition to the actions that Russia does in Ukraine and actually the way it treats the rest of the world. I personally detest terrorism, and I cannot imagine how in somebody's head terroristic action can be useful and lead to any kind of solution of any problem ever. When the tragedy of 9/11 took place, I was a teenager, and I remember coming back home and watching the news, and honestly my brain disagreed to believe such things can happen, and that for any even totally evil brain, such idea can seem like a useful idea or an idea that can bring any kind of benefit. And I think that this event is a global changing event in the attitudes to many aspects of politics. And I see a lot of signs that Russia acts like a terrorist for decades, and there are lots of terroristic attacks that were actually organized by the government of Russia to later explain the need for various special operations wars like in Chechnya. And I personally know that we were very much afraid that they will organize a terroristic attack somewhere on the territory of Ukraine, and later will claim that this was made by Ukrainians. And I'm always sure something similar they can do. Now, when we have full-scale war with Russia, maybe they don't need to pretend. But anyway, they are capable of doing any kind of evil and trying to show that this was not Russia, but anybody else in this world. And I think that it is impossible to negotiate with terrorists, even though we like watching these films where very professional psychologists speak to terrorists. But perhaps the best way to stop terrorism is to eradicate terrorism in general. And now when I look at many countries, many terrorist groups, they are not respected, and they are not allowed to speak, to have their TV channels to be represented in United Nations or elsewhere. And Russia is a huge terroristic country that is represented in many world organizations, and they have their channels, they have their government, they have their budget, and still they are considered a country. And the presidents like Macron think it's possible to save the face and to negotiate something with terrorists. Now, another thing that proves that Russia is a terrorist country is the way they treat global problems. And now, more and more often, they try to threaten the world with famine that will be the result of the ports that are actually blocked by Russian troops. And also they threaten with the problems in electricity, gas, oil, and so on. First of all, I think it's a huge problem of the world and of Ukraine that we were very much dependent on Russia's resources. And I did love one of the phrases on my comments that Russia's economy can be described as dig and sell economy. And of course, they mainly do not build, innovate, invest, but they simply use their resources. But from the other perspective, they were working really hard for the last decades to make the world dependent on their resources. And now when we think about European Union, for example, and their energy independence, we realize it will take years to become independent from Russia, and they start using it as an argument to pressure Ukraine. But energy, let alone, we have this problem of global famine, and many countries in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in Americas depend on the products that are grown in Ukraine. And now Russians try to show that the stubbornness of Ukrainians is a problem that can lead to global famine, but it's not like that. And it's not the first time that Russia actually uses famine as an instrument to kill, to destroy. And I know I have to just film a separate video, and I feel kind of nervous because that's an important topic, a topic of Holodomor. That was a totally artificial famine of the 30s, organized by the Communist Party to kill millions of Ukrainians. And this is something similar they want to recreate right now, and they use this totally different arguments for different audiences. But first of all, they block Ukrainian ports. What are they doing in Ukrainian ports? They mine sea territories. It's impossible for Ukrainian ships to travel and to get out of the Black Sea or the Sea of Azov, and they want to describe it as a problem caused by Ukrainians. But we have to remember what is the starting point of this all, not sanctions, but Russians invading independent and free country in the center of Europe. And you cannot negotiate, you cannot accept the demands of terrorists, because we all know that after that we get new and new demands, and we lose more and more. So the only way is to eradicate this terrorist regime that can cause global problems. And even those people who doubt how bad Russia is must be persuaded by this argument that they use famine, global famine, as one of the arguments that must lead to lifting up of the sanctions. So they are not trying to take away the troops from Ukraine. They are not trying to negotiate, but they are trying to threaten the world with global famine, with cold winters in European cities because of lack of energy, with high prices and so on. They have nothing to offer. They have nothing normal to offer except fear, threats, and so on. And I think that the main lesson here is to learn that Russia can never be trusted. Russia is a terrorist state today, and we need to be very careful when choosing our providers, because any kind of dependence is always toxic and can always turn dangerous. So I do hope that when you hear this conversation about global product crisis, you realize that it is not the problem of Ukraine, it is not the problem caused by Ukraine, but it is the problem of war that Russia started in Ukraine. And if we keep following the Russia's scenario, we will have more and more problems. We will have longer war, we will have more territories occupied by Russian orcs, and we will have more global problems, because their main task is to ruin the normal world order. Thank you very much for your advice that you provide below these videos. Thank you for buying me coffee, becoming my patrons. Thank you for liking these videos, and of course for your subscriptions, because this way us Ukrainians can tell more about the real situation in Ukraine, and we do need your support in these dark times, but I'm sure they will finish in our victory, because there is no other way for normal life and democracy to continue on this planet globally. Slava Ukraini!